Hey, this is Dave from dragonDropCode.com. I'm going to show you this PeopleGrid app. And right now I'm in Thunkable, and I'm going to show you the working app first. So I'm just going to run this thing. And it's kind of cool. This is coming from a spreadsheet, which I'll show you in a second. But you can click on one of these people, and what it does is it goes to OpenAI and generates some questions, or you can ask your own question. And then basically, the question gets sent to ChatGPT or OpenAI, and it answers, and it answers in the first person and from, in this case, Ella Baker's perspective. But what this app does is whatever people you create and put in your spreadsheet, um, their names, their descriptions, and their pictures will show up in the app. So I'm going to show you how to do that from scratch. And kind of the first thing is we're going to create a new project in Thunkable. So I'm going to create a new project. I'll just call it PeopleGrid. Um, and you have to choose a category. So I'll choose education, and I'll just do create. Okay, so I'm going to have a blank project here. And kind of the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to show a grid. And you're going to use this thing called a data viewer grid. So I'm going to just drag that on and make it a little bit bigger. And this is where we're going to show our peeps. But first, we got to build our peeps. And so the nice thing about Thunkable is you can quickly, with a Google Sheet or an Airtable, various database things, but a simple thing is a Google Sheet, you can create one and use it in your app. And so I have this one, and really important is this top row: short name, profile pic. Remember these names, but that first row needs to be your headers, and then you can put your data inside there. And I've got, I think, 6 people in here, and all I've got is a short name, a full name. I've got, these are all, and those are JPEG or PNGs. These are image URLs for each person. And then I took from Wikipedia, I grabbed, a short part of their description. Okay, now to build this app, you're going to have to create your own spreadsheet. And what I would do to start is just use exactly these same column headers. Okay, short name, profile pic, and description. It's okay if they're different, but I would just use those for now. And when you're starting, just put a couple people in, just put like 2 people in. Don't worry too much about what's in there. You can always change that and just get an app working, and then you can go and change your data anytime you want. Okay, so I've got this spreadsheet called Black History. I'm going to go to my project, and I'm going to click on this little data icon, and it's going to come up, and I'm going to say plus on my data sources. And these can be sheets or Airtables, like I was saying. I'm going to create new. It's a little tricky, this UI, and then I'm going to say Google Sheets, and notice I could choose something else. And then I'm going to say select a sheet. I'm not going to put a name in here. I'm just going to select one, and it'll let me choose from my existing things. And I'm just going to choose Black History. Okay, you'll choose some spreadsheet from your own Google Docs folders. Okay, and notice it says which rows are your column headers in. They're in the first row, and then my data starts in the second row. But usually, if you just set your sheets up that way, you never have to worry about those settings. Okay, so I'm going to create it. And the nice thing is now I can real quickly, kind of get my data showing up. So I can choose for this grid, right? I'm selecting the grid. I can choose the spreadsheet, as that's what data is going to show up. But then you got to go down here and set this stuff. The picture is going to be the profile pic. And, remember, that's just these image URLs, right? Um, and so I'm going to choose profile pic for the picture, and then I'm going to choose the short name for the text. And voila, this is nice because, I can go change the data in my spreadsheet, and my app will be different, right? So I could make a totally different app with different people just by changing my spreadsheet. Okay, whatever people you're interested in. Okay, cool. So we've got our grid, and I can put a title in, and put some other stuff in. But for now, let's just take this grid and we're going to make it so when they click on someone that it'll bring up a profile page. So I need another page. So I'm going to go to the designer and I'm going to create a new page, and I can create a new screen here. And I'm going to call this the profile screen. So I'll just rename it. And I'm just going to show one person on the profile screen, whoever the user is selected. Okay, and so on this profile screen, I'm going to have like a label for their name, and I'm going to have an image, maybe slightly bigger than the one on the home page, but we'll show their picture. But it's got to be whatever they've selected. Okay, so I'm just going to call this guy. It's kind of important to name things so when you get to the blocks that you can change things. So anyway, I'm just going to call this name label, and I'll leave it blank for now, but we're going to programmatically change it. So I'm going to go back to the home screen and show you how to get to this screen. And on the home screen in the blocks, we've got this data viewer grid, right? And there's this event called item click. So it's basically when the user chooses one of those pictures, what do you want to do? Okay, and essentially what we're going to do, I'm going to go to control, and there's this button, sorry, this block called navigate, and I'm going to navigate to profile screen. Okay, I want to do one more thing before I jump to that screen, is I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call that variable row ID, and I'm going to set it to just a blank text in its initialization. But when they choose somebody, I'm going to set that variable. And it's interesting. When they choose or when they do an item click on the grid, this row ID basically gives you, and you can't see it here. It's the ID from the spreadsheet. So every row has kind of a hidden ID, which is a big, long generated piece of text. But that's what this row ID is. So I click right on this green thing and I stick it in there. So all I'm doing is I'm saying I want to remember which row, which person they chose in my spreadsheet. And I want to remember it when I get to the profile screen. Okay, so right now, if I run my app, I can click on one of these and it's going to get me to my screen, my second screen, but there's nothing on the second screen right now. Okay, so let's now code what happens on the profile screen. So on the profile screen, I'm going to want to do screen opens. So this event means right when the second screen opens, what do I want to do? And what I want to do is I want to set my name and my label. And so I'm going to set my name label to, and when you kind of connect the data source, like when I connected on my data, this thing called Black History, this sheet, this data source, it creates a bunch of blocks for me so I can grab the data out of the sheet. But you have to come down to this data sources folder and notice it's got these blocks that are specific to my sheet. And what I want to do is just grab this thing. And it's real tricky. This default text ID is not what you want to put in there. You need to use that variable. So we set up a variable. We stored the row ID over here in this variable called row ID. So when I get to profile screen, I'm trying to go to my sheet and I need to tell it which row to grab. So I'm going to go to variables and choose this thing called row ID. Okay. So all I'm saying is go to the Black History sheet. Here it is. Go there, I'm going to actually grab the name, the full name, and stick it in my name label. All I'm trying to do is show my name on that second screen. And essentially, I want to do the same thing for the image. So I'm going to set the image picture. So this is this thing. I'm going to set its picture, and I kind of want almost the same block. So I'm going to I did Command C, Command V to copy it. And I got to make sure to choose, in this case, the profile pick, right? I'm going to choose this column and grab the value from it. But once again, using whatever row has been chosen, my row ID. Okay. Click back on the main screen, run your app. When I choose somebody, notice it shows the image of Robert Smalls and his name. Okay. And you can mess around with, how this image looks and, and center the text. But, we got our data, and notice it's grabbing whichever one we choose, right? So if I choose Gleaves, it's going to put Richard Gleaves information in here. Okay. And this is just basic, we're not doing any AI yet. But what we have is we have this app where we've got a grid. When you click on a person, it shows their profile. Okay. And we could put in their description as well, because it's in the sheet. We could grab it just like we grab the name and the picture. Okay, cool. Okay. So we're ready. How do you do a conversation with each person? And so let's do the AI part of things. So far, what we've done is more just how to do a people grid, right? So anyway, well, I want to make it so I can talk to the person on this profile screen. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add another some more components. I don't want rich text. What I want is a text input, and this is going to be, I'm going to call this the question text input, and get rid of the one. So that's where the user is going to enter a question. I'll make it a little bigger. Okay. It could be multi-line. Okay, so that's the question. And then I'm actually going to use a text input. And it's mainly because those things can have scroll bars on them. We don't really want it to be where the user can input. This is where we're going to put the response from OpenAI. And I don't want this one to be editable, and I do want it multi-line. And this one I'm going to call my response text. Okay, this is where when I ask a question to OpenAI, I want the answer to show up here. So we're going to show whatever person's chosen, we're going to show their information, and then the user can kind of ask a question. We need to put one button in here to let them ask. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And put on the thing ask, and I'll name this button ask button. Okay, so here we go. Let's just give ourselves a little room, and you're definitely, you need to test these on the phone as well, because even the view, the test viewer we're running is going to have a different look than if you run it on the phone. But anyway, this is the basics of what we got, the UI at least. Okay, and let's do the blocks. Okay, so anytime you're going to do OpenAI, the first thing you got to do is, and basically how to talk to ChatGPT, right? You're going to have to go down, and in the advanced section, you're going to create one of these OpenAI services. This is a component you can use. For whatever reason, it's in the advanced section, and you're going to choose it and create one. Okay, and you'll notice I've now got this thing called OpenAI Service 1. The only other thing you got to do is you got to set the API key. And check out draganddropcode.com for the other videos will tell you about keys. You can go to openai.com/API, and you can basically get a key. They'll even give you some free credits. But if you put your credit card in, it's also very inexpensive at this point to do this stuff, at least just for testing. Okay, so you're going to need to put your key in here to do stuff. And so I'm going to do that here in a second. So I'm going to pause you just for all right, so I just pasted my key into the settings here for OpenAI Service 1. And you're going to have to paste your key in there. But don't worry too much about it. It's very inexpensive and maybe even free if you sign up, and you'll get free credits. Okay, so I've got this OpenAI service, and now I need to use it, right? And what I want is when the user clicks on the ask button, okay, so they're going to type a question here, then click on ask, and then I want to send whatever they ask to OpenAI. So when they click the button, I should really check to make sure whatever they've entered in question text input is not empty, right? But what I'm going to do is just send it to OpenAI directly and just assume they've typed something in. So I'll go there and use this text completion. Okay, and this is just like you're going to ChatGPT and asking a question, and you can put whatever you want in for the prompt. Okay, and what we want to do is ask whatever the user's asked. We want to grab their text. So that the text property gives us whatever the user's typed in here. So I'm going to grab that guy and stick it in as the prompt I send to OpenAI. And then I'm going to get a response back, and I'm going to stick that in my response text. Okay, so I want to set my response text to this response. And I should really check for an error. And so we'll put that in, but right now, let's see if we're just connecting okay. Right now, we're not taking into account who we're asking the question to, but let's run it first. Let's just see what we got. So I'm going to test it. And, oh, sorry, we need to start back on the home screen, run it. I'll choose Robert Smalls. Um, I'll say what was Robert Smalls' great feat, and I'll ask the question. Okay. And he did this daring escape from slavery during the Civil War, and actually had a big part in winning the Civil War for the North. But anyway, so we're connecting to OpenAI, which is great, and it's answering our question. And I just want to show one more thing. So what we want to do is actually ask the particular person and have them speak in the first person. Okay, now one thing we did over here was we set the name label and the picture. But what I actually am going to do is I'm going to set up two variables, and one's going to be called the name. And whenever you initialize, just put in like for if it's text, just put in quote quote. If it's a number, put in 0. But I'm going to create another variable called description. Actually, I made too many of these. Okay, and because I'm going to send this to OpenAI as well, so they know who should be answering the question, basically. Okay, and then for our prompt, we're going to use some prompt engineering. So I'm going to use this join block, and I'm going to put the join block in, and we're still going to ask the user's question, but we're first going to give it some instructions. And I'm going to say, okay, please answer in the first person from the perspective of, and then I'm going to add, I click on this little blue icon to add more things. But what I want is to ask that from the perspective of, and in this case, oh, sorry, I just need to, I made these variables, but I didn't set them yet. So I'm going to, right when the app starts, I'm going to set my name. I'm going to set it to this block. Okay, so I'm going to get from my spreadsheet the name, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my variable called description, except obviously I'm going to choose description from my spreadsheet. Okay, so once the screen opens, I'll have these variables that will have whoever the person selected's name and their description. and their description is coming from our spreadsheet, and basically what all I did was paste Wikipedia stuff in there. Okay, so we got that all set up. And now, yeah, so when we make this prompt to send to OpenAI, we're going to say, please answer in the first person from the perspective of colon, and then we can just use our variable name. And just to make sure they know who that person is, I'm going to add another thing here, and I'm going to say, here is some more information about that person. And then I need one more slot. Here we go. And, here's some more information. Make sure you put a space here. Whoops, sorry. But you want a space after the name. So here is some more info. We can even just put a period here, so as a separator. But here's some more info, sorry, about the person. And then I'll put a colon, and then what I want is the description of the person. So I'm just giving OpenAI some context. And then I'm just going to add one more of these little red dealy boppers, just to make sure there's a period before the user's question. So I'm just going to put in period, here is the question. Okay, so we're just doing prompt engineering to say, to make it more conversational, where you're really talking to the person in some sense. Okay. Anyway, let's see how it works. I'm going to go back to screen one, and I'm going to choose to run. Let's choose Fannie Lou Hammer, and let's ask a question. What was your greatest feat? And I'll say ask. And notice my question doesn't have anything about Fannie Lou Hammer, right? But because we put the prompt engineering in, OpenAI knows who we're talking about. Okay. And you'll notice she's answering in the first person as if she's talking to you. But really it's still given the history of her. But so this question the user typed, right, was just part of what we sent to ChatGPT or OpenAI, and the rest of it was our instructions, or what's called our prompt engineering, also known as kind of the system prompt. Okay, so anyway, what I've shown you is at least a bare bones app, which you can have a grid, and then when the user chooses someone, you can show their information and then use OpenAI to ask them a question. And so you could build all kinds of PeopleGrid apps in this way. And in fact, you could take this app and just change what's in the spreadsheet to make it work. But you definitely have to own the spreadsheet that your app is talking to. And that's why, like, you can't take my code directly and use it. You'll have to take the code, but put in your own data source, like I showed you in the tutorial. Thanks a lot, and always dragandropcode.com, but a lot more videos, and I can help you build AI.